this is it. And maybe sometimes things don't work out, right? There's sometimes that things don't work out. But it doesn't mean that we can't find love again. It doesn't mean that we can't heal.
Welcome to Love Stories, a relationship podcast for successful women, where we talk about love, dating, relationships, and how great love stories are made. Whether you're searching for the one, you're madly in love, or simply curious about romantic relationships, this podcast is for you. I'm Charlene Byars. Each week, you'll hear from women, couples, and experts, and all the ins and outs on how to create your own love story. I am so passionate about this subject, and I'm so excited to share all the things that you can apply to create a beautiful love story of your own. Cheers to great love.
Welcome back to Love Stories Podcast. I've been thinking about something, and I didn't know if I mentioned this before, and this is a message to my single ladies. I have a free webinar. That is called How to Attract Devoted Masculine Men in 30 Days or Less. Yes. And if you haven't had an opportunity to watch this masterclass, like I said, it's free, and I'm going to leave the link in the bio. It is a masterclass to really help you. What I always say is get out of your own way. Yes, there are things in this masterclass that you can actually apply today to start attracting those devoted masculine men and repel the jerks, right? Like, who needs room in our lives for those jerks? You know, those guys who show up in the beginning and we think, oh, this is wonderful. And then, shortly after that, they end up being, those jerks. So if you haven't had this opportunity, I highly recommend that you do. Just take a look in the bio, and I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you what you thought of the masterclass and how you started applying the things that you learned into your dating life. And I also want to talk to you guys about the love tip of the week. Yes. Okay, for those of you out there, I have this love tip of the week that I'm going to talk to you about. So this is what I want to say. Foster a positive mindset. What do I mean by that? Approach dating with a positive attitude. Like, focus on the potential for meaning connections rather than dwelling on our past disappointments. So ladies, give the person that you are getting to meet for the very first time, give them an opportunity to get to know who they are, and not based on, what has happened in the past. And don't bring that to that new person. Really give yourself that opportunity to clear your mind and be in the present moment. Because when you give yourself an opportunity to really get to know who that person is, then you actually get to know who they are. And it's not going to be based on, your past experience with other guys. And you can clearly and quickly, get to find out if he's a nice guy, if he's a good man, or if you're dealing with, again, another jerk. So foster a positive mindset and realize that the majority of the men out there are actually great guys. We're just not seeing them yet. Okay, so give yourself that opportunity, get out there and have a good time. Have a great time getting to know different people, because that's what dating is all about. Getting to know different men until we are ready to commit to just one. All right. Okay, so this week, I know I say this all the time, but I am so excited. You guys are going to love my next guest. I have Danny J. Johnson, and she was incredible. I absolutely loved hearing about her journey, her love story. It was so good, you guys, and she's now in this amazing relationship. So you're going to hear some really good moments. It was awesome. I didn't want to stop the conversation, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to read her bio, and then we're going to get her on. Okay. So Danny J is a former acrobat turned award-winning entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, podcast host, and storyteller with over 100 plus siblings. As a former founder of the Sweaty Betties, an online fitness community, Danny J discovered the most effective method for capturing attention and increasing revenue, sharing personal and brand stories. Danny J works heard on her weekly show, The Best Life Podcast, which has reached nearly 2 million downloads. As a true example of truth is stranger than fiction, she uses her real-life Jerry Springer life stories to engage with her audience, teach life lessons, and inspire others to rewrite their stories. An expert in starting over, Danny has been working full-time online since 2012. She's become debt-free in 69 days and has helped hundreds of families to do the same with her signature program, Find the Money Project. Danny J now helps leaders and influencers rebuild and restart after relationship or financial collapse through her programs, workshops, and personal coaching. After traveling over 37 countries and living in an RV for over a year, her life's mission is to see all the things, do all the things, and make a ton of impact while doing it. With no further ado, let's welcome my next guest, Danny J.
Well, hello. Oh my goodness, Danny. First of all, I want to say thank you. Yeah. Thank you for being here. You are actually my first live guest.
Yay!
Yay!
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And, when we started this podcast, I knew that I wanted to bring this podcast and celebrate women and celebrate women's journey and love and all the things. But one of the things I was excited about is actually being able to just be here in person with someone and have a really raw, real conversation about love and about relationships. And so thank you for being here today.
Yes.
And I wanted to say something even before we start with the love story. So you're a TEDx speaker. How did that come about?
I am. You know what's
that's so cool.
What's really fun too is I got to speak with Jeff, my partner. We both got to speak on the same stage, so that was really special. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I had a goal to speak on a TEDx stage from 2013.
Okay.
And the thing about those kind of goals is it sounds nice, but I didn't really ever do the things to get the stage.
Yeah.
In 2020, I said, this is the year I'm going to finally do it.
Okay.
So I applied to hundreds, literally probably 180 TEDx events. And then the pandemic happened and all the events were canceled. So the year, I'm like, this is the year. And then there were no events. However, I got maybe 3 or 4 that were interested.
Okay.
One of them was in England. And they had their event scheduled and they pushed it back. They pushed it back 3 times, actually. And then out of the blue, one of my partner's friends reached out to him and he said, hey, we're doing a TEDx. Would you like, they offered him the TEDx. And he said, well, I would love to. Also, my girlfriend is trying to do a TEDx. And so the way I finally got it was kind of through him after all those applications. It was actually a friend of a friend who was looking for specific topics.
Okay.
And he asked us both to speak. So, and it was such a great opportunity because that was the hardest talk I've ever done in my life.
That was this I would assume this is the first time that you guys were even speaking together.
Yes, yeah, wow. It was.
What was the topic?
My topic was the gift of starting over. And so he, what was his on? His was about lying.
Okay.
And actually there was a story about early in a relationship, I caught him in a lie and that kind of catapulted us into a different path. So he shared that story, but working together on writing our talks. It was so great to have someone because we'd rehearsed together, we practiced together, and it was so funny because by the end, literally the day after, I had his speech memorized and he had my speech memorized. So I could have said his whole talk and he could have said my whole talk because we practiced so much together. But it was such a cool opportunity. One, just to do it in general, but 2, to do it with someone I love so much. It was really, really cool.
That's a cool story. Oh my god!
And it was in New York City too, so that was really fun.
City,
yeah,
so it worked out.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So we're gonna dive into this.
Yeah.
So your man's name is
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, so take me back. How did you meet Mr. Jeff?
Oh goodness. So.
Oh, but before that, no,
sure.
Going before that.
Yeah.
Before you met Mr. Jeff. How long were you single? Were you like in a relationship prior to that, or was Jeff kind of like your first?
Yeah, so I was married for almost 10 years.
Okay.
We actually finalized our divorce papers about 4 months before it would have been our 10-year anniversary.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I loved being married. You know, it was one of those, it's funny because growing up, I was kind of one of those people that was like, I don't need to be married. I don't need a piece of paper. And when I met my husband, it just felt right.
Okay.
And so we were married. I thought everything was amazing. I thought things were good. We had both moved up the year prior. We had both moved to Utah to take care of my grandmother.
Okay.
And so that was pretty tough. We found out while we were living there she had dementia. And so things were a little rough, but I didn't think anything was rough in the relationship. It was just rough in general.
Okay. But prior to, was this when you guys were already married?
Yes.
Okay. So,
yeah.
So how long were you? Okay. So how
So
long?
we were married about 8 years at that point.
Okay. So you're married 8 years. And then prior to getting married to your husband, your ex-husband, how long did you guys date before you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
your engagement?
we dated about a year and a half before we got engaged, and then we got married about 6 months later. Really short engagement.
Okay.
Decent. You know, I was 26, I want to say.
Okay, about 26
when I got
years
married,
old.
and he
Okay,
was
so-
32.
Okay,
So,
32. So you guys, so you're thinking everything was great.
Yeah.
You got married. Things were cool.
Got
and
married.
then-
Things were great. Yeah, 8 years together.
together.
And, you know, we had been planning big things, like planning for our 10-year anniversary and, of course, looking toward the future. And the year we lived with my grandmother, things were, like I said, they didn't feel rough between us, just rough in general because it was a hard situation. And there was something coming up with him. I could just tell something was off.
The energy, right? You felt
Yes,
something.
yes.
Was it something like you haven't felt before with
Yes,
you before?
something I
Or
never
was
felt.
already some? Okay, so this
Something
is,
I never.
This is different.
Yeah, very,
Okay.
very new. And to be honest, I kind of thought he was just depressed.
Okay.
And I kind of took it as, well, it's just the situation we're in because
So
we're
you're
with
more
grandma.
Like, we're with my grandma. She's
Yes.
sick.
Yep.
We're living there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it felt like he was a little edgy, but he seemed depressed. He seemed not. He was a very outgoing person, always happy-go-lucky. So
Okay.
I could definitely tell something
Okay.
was going on.
Okay.
And I remember sitting down with him the day before I found out what was really going on. I just stared at him and I said, "What are you not telling me?" And I was like, something is going on. And I just, and again, I kept thinking, okay, we just need to get out of here. And we had been making plans to leave my grandma's house. And I said, things are changing. We're going to get out. Like, you know, we're going to get out of this.
How long were you guys there at this point? So how long were you guys actually there when you were like, babe, something's up?
Yeah, we were with her for a year. And I would say that it was about 3 months that I was noticing things were off.
Okay.
And he told me that he wanted to go to town and be alone for a few days.
Okay.
And I wasn't happy about it, but I said, hey, I understand. Take all the time you need. I was really upset because I was thinking like we could work through this, and I don't know what's going on with you, but I want to help.
But that was scary because you're like, what's going on? Like, why do you want to be alone?
Very, very scary. And also it was just making me sad because I felt like it was my fault because it was my grandmother. And I felt, and I remember at the beginning when we decided to live with her, I said, if this affects our marriage, we're out.
Okay.
And so it was starting to affect I felt like it was starting to affect our marriage.
Okay, yeah.
And he was about to leave that morning. He was going to go into town. And because we lived like 30 miles from anything, grandma's house was in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And that morning, he was also, he was trying to find some jobs, and he was filling out an application. And I was helping fill out the application. And there were some things I didn't know, like about his past work addresses. And so I said, hey, can you help me fill this out?
Right.
And just, I got this gut feeling to look at his phone. And again, I honestly didn't think anything about anything except that he was depressed. But I had this like thought of grab his phone.
Something till you grab the phone.
Yes.
Have you done this before?
Never. And and we lived in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Like
and
there
this
was.
is, I know, but this is interesting. No, thank you for. I want to stop here. I want to pause this for a second because this is really interesting. I don't know what you're going to tell me next, right? So I'm learning all this for the first time, but I want people to hear this. Us women, you can't explain it. But if you give yourself the opportunity to just sit with yourself, you can feel that some things you don't know exactly what it is.
Yep.
but having that ability to just go with that gut feeling. So that's what I always talk about, like, they got feminine energy. Our feminine energy is when we just like, so no. And this is interesting because you have never thought of ever looking at his phone. So something was really like, bah, bah. So that's, okay, let's go with that. Okay, so now something's that you're like, I don't know, Charlene, I want to like look at the phone. So you look at the phone.
So and I noticed, I had this feeling that morning to look at his phone, but I noticed he kept it on him. And usually he'd just leave it on the table somewhere. So then it just felt even more heightened. Like, I really need to see, why is he carrying it around? He usually leaves it.
Kind of leaves it alone.
Yeah. Okay. So I asked him to sit down and type this resume.
Okay.
And so he put the phone right next to him and put both his hands on the keyboard. And when he had both his hands on the keyboard, I grabbed the phone and I ran to the bathroom and locked the door.
Yes.
And he instantly is running and he starts banging on the door. He's like, I need the phone for the addresses. And I just opened it because we had each other's passwords. I mean, there was nothing hidden.
Yeah.
And just looked right at the top, and there was a girl's name I didn't recognize that he had never mentioned before. Yeah. And so, of course, I opened it. I just start scrolling back. And by this time, he's starting to try to, unlock the door. Yeah. He's trying to get in. And I already see these messages. It says, like, I'm in love with you. I'm getting a divorce. And it was blindsiding. Completely blindsiding. I had no idea. Yep. I didn't think that we were having issues.
Okay.
And so he gets the door open. I ran past him. I go into the yard and I keep scrolling. I'm trying to find the beginning, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm in the yard and he's trying to like catch me and I'm trying to just get to the end and I get as far as I can and I read, I read as much as I could read. Yeah. Right. And I typed back to her. I said, hey, I said something silly and I just threw the phone.
Okay.
And I was like, wow. And, it's like he's caught. I know what's going on and I'm just in complete shock.
You were shocked.
Shocked.
Because there was nothing, girlfriend, like now that you can look, you know what I mean? Now you're looking back. I mean, you had that moment to look at the phone that day.
Yeah.
But when you go even back now, did you see stuff?
No. I wish I did. Okay. And I mean, I did see.
Sometimes we don't.
I did see stuff. However, it was back to anything I saw, I thought it was because of grandma. It was.
So you put it on grandma.
Yeah.
Like
it wasn't like he was sneaking around. And I was traveling a lot during that time. So, and also we lived in this small town. We lived about 30 minutes from a larger town. Mm-hmm. And it kills me because, well, at least then, because I thought he was getting depressed, I'm like, you need to start going to the gym. You need to do something for yourself. So I kept I'm like, go to the gym, get away from here. Well, he met her at the gym.
Okay, ladies, listen to this.
So I was like, go.
Danny did not send her man to go be with another woman. That was on his own.
Yes.
That was on his own. People make their own decisions.
Yes.
People do their own, have their own choices.
Yeah.
So let's just make that clear. So if someone goes ahead and, goes outside the marriage, right? Like, that is the responsibility of that person.
It's so true. And
I get it. That's where we go. That's where we go. Women go, oh, baby, I shouldn't have done that. But if it was going to happen, mama, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Either people are going to or they're not.
Yep.
Right?
And also looking back, I read things about signs. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting was he was kind of depressed. I was sending him to the gym to help him feel better. So there were things like he started to dress nicer, started to do those things. But I thought it was because he was getting his confidence back from the gym. Wow. So all of the things I just assumed were from the situation and then the confidence he was getting, but something was still going on internally. So I'm
the last thing, I mean, think about that. Like, realistically, if you feel that you guys are having a pretty decent relationship, right? I mean, that is the last thing that your mind wants to go to.
And we both worked from home, so it didn't seem like... And we lived in such a small... Yes, how is it even possible? Yes. Like, we work from home. We live in a small town. I mean, honestly, that was like, how is it even possible? Right. How are things happening right in front of me?
Right.
And so, and I think there were a couple... And looking back and having discussions with him after the fact, it makes a lot of sense, like the pieces put together. I think he was struggling internally. He was getting some validation outside because I was too focused on my family and grandmother. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of his own insecurities that he wasn't dealing with. I don't think he was necessarily, I would call a cheater or somebody that's like, this is a pattern.
Okay.
After the fact, it was really more of, this is a good person who did a bad thing, not a person who habitually is always cheating.
Got it. Yeah. Not like one of those typical guys that are like...
Yep.
Yeah, not so
But
nice.
Regardless, it was traumatic and it was it was really hard. And I mean, right after I found out, I couldn't eat for a week. Right. You know, I just dropped weight. I was in shock. Yep. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell my family. I was thinking, well, let's make this work out, you know, right. And if you tell people, then they're going to hate him. And honestly, when I found out, I was in shock and I was angry, but mostly I was like, why? Right. What is wrong? You know? Right. And because I still was thinking he's depressed, I'm like, babe, this is not this is not it. Yeah, you know, let's figure this out.
Did you think at the time after, I mean, I know there's, you know, layers here, but did you think at the time after you found that out, because you were in love with him, you wanted to be, you know, stay with him. Yeah. Did you feel that, okay, maybe we can work this out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I really wanted that.
And where was he? What did he want?
I think, well, what I know now was once I found out, he was really confused. Okay. I think because he told the girl that there were problems, but I think mostly just to keep her hanging on. Yeah. And then I think what really happened was he didn't intend to fall in love with her, but he did. Okay. So now he's got me that he's in love with, her that he's in love with. He doesn't want to hurt either one of us, but he did. Mm-hmm. And what he told me later was he eventually, I think 5 days later, he texted me that he wanted a divorce. Okay. And I said, like, well, no. I'm like, if you want a divorce, you file. Like, this is on you, but this is not what I want.
You're like, I want to work out this marriage. Because he was confused.
Yes, he was confused. And I think she was probably holding some, you know, telling him he needed to make a decision. And I said, fine, like, that's on you. But this is, just so you know, this is not my decision. Mm-hmm. And
did you ever confront the girl besides that time?
I did. I did. Yeah. I actually showed up to the gym. I found her and she saw me and she was like, hi. And I go, hi. And I said, I wanted to talk. And we went to the locker room and she,
no way.
Yeah,
okay, yes.
We just sat in the locker room and she goes, well, what do you want to know? And I was just like, I don't know. She said, well, do you want to know what he said about you? I was like, yes. And she goes, well, he never really said anything bad about you. I was just like, I just need to know how this started. Like, how did this begin? You know, how did this begin and how was it going on? Right. And I think, he told me this. The reason he wanted a divorce was he figured I already messed up my marriage, so now I have to make this new thing work.
So it was like he couldn't fathom, since I already stepped out in the marriage, how in the world is she going to forgive me and how are we going to get...
Yeah. Yep. And so he was like, he said he wanted a divorce.
Also, like you said, like he was also struggling
for sure.
With, like you said, being in love with two women.
Two people, yeah.
You know?
And so there was a lot. And
but he was a married man.
And looking back, you know, it makes me sad for him. It makes me sad for all of us because funny enough, she was really hurt. You know, she was really hurt. I was really hurt. Everybody was really hurt. And, you know, I was angry at her. She knew he was married, but also I think sometimes that married person doesn't tell the truth, you know, so I think he was...
Obviously he wasn't forthcoming, you know, to either of you.
To either of us.
To either of you guys.
And ultimately, I decided to leave town. He told me he wanted a divorce. I said, like, do that on your own. I'm not going to have it. I left because in my mind I thought, okay, go ahead and be with her, because if you were together, like, the fantasy is going to end and that's probably not going to last. And so I said, yeah, go for it. Like, be with her. And I knew, and it worked exactly how I thought it did. I think they broke up within a matter of weeks.
Really? Okay.
But he didn't come back to me for 6 months. Okay. And so I moved to LA. And I just kind of...
So you guys... Okay, so you separated.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah, I just said, I'm leaving. Because we finally we were just getting grandma in a home and getting, like...
So she was already doing the transition.
Yes.
So
the timing was literally the same week. It was all just a mess.
And before you guys got married, so the ideal was... He wasn't married before?
No, he wasn't.
And you weren't either?
No.
Because you were like 26 years old. So you guys were definitely on this journey, wanting to get married, stay together, the whole...
We always had this joke that the only way this marriage ends is if one of us dies, or and if you cheat, we'll kill you, so still one of us dies.
So that's what I'm trying to say. So this was completely such a shock to you. Because prior to that, you guys had a good relationship, right? Yeah. Okay, so then you leave. Okay, what happened?
So so I left. I moved to LA because one of my best friends, she reached out. Okay. She had just gone through the same thing 9 months prior.
So she's like totally understood your situation.
And she said, hey, come stay with me, live on my couch, we'll figure it out. Okay. So I moved to LA, stayed on her couch for a month and got my own place. Okay. And her and I, we just commiserated, cried together. We
thing.
both were the same age. Our husbands were the same age.
Oh my gosh.
9 months before her husband had an affair. And so we just were like processing every day.
Yes.
And thank God for her because she was a few months ahead of me. I could at least see that there was some hope because I was devastated.
Oh, Mama, I can't imagine.
I was.
And for people listening to this, that, you know, when you've been betrayed like that is such a devastation that like actually changes truly like how we look at relationships, 100%. How we look at ourselves. And the saddest part is that, you know, it isn't necessarily a reflection on us. It has, you know, but when you're in that situation, it's like, how can you not feel all the feels? Like, what did I do? What could I have done differently? What of this? What of that? What of that? But really, again, like I said earlier, ultimately, that person is the one that made the choice to do that.
That was a big lesson I had to learn because, of course, when I just read the text, I didn't know who the girl was. Yeah. So instantly I thought, she must be some 22-year-old. She's prettier than me. She's hotter than me. She wasn't any of those things. No. She was like a year younger than me. There was nothing. Honestly, she looked like a tattooed version of me. Like there was nothing really extra special about her. So it was confusing. Like, wait a second, it's not because she's prettier or younger or anything she has.
Nope.
And there wasn't anything that I could pinpoint. I was like, I used to think if someone cheated, it's because their wife's a nag or they're not having sex or they're, but we were still doing all those things. I'm like, I'm not a nag and I'm not that bad of a person. So it just felt gutting. What
did he say?
He said...
What was his reason for going outside the marriage?
Yeah, he said... I said, why? And he said that he didn't feel like a priority. Yeah. And he also gave...
That connection. He felt like he was missing like a connection?
Yeah. Okay. He also told me a couple funny things that I think are funny now. He said, because I didn't like Christmas or Disneyland. And I was like...
Are you serious?
I go, have you had Christmas with her? Have you been to Disneyland with this girl? Like, neither one. It happened in the summer. They had only been together a few months. I'm like, listen.
Yeah.
But he was just grasping at straws.
He was.
No, actually, he didn't say priority. He said, I didn't feel needed. And I said, I didn't need you, but I wanted you. Yeah. You know, and sometimes that's hard because I feel like... we don't necessarily need our partners, but we want our partners. But it was him not feeling needed. It wasn't a priority. Sorry. He said, you don't need me. That was exactly his words. And I just remember like, wow, I don't understand. And now years later, I've done a lot of work and counseling and things on like the feminine and masculine dynamics. And I understand that a lot more. And I, you know, take responsibility for those parts. Yeah. But again, I can't take responsibility for his actions. He could have spoken up. He could have said how he didn't feel needed earlier before this happened. But I don't think he had the language. I don't think he had the tools. And I think that, you know, I've grown much more and I can spot things now. And I think sometimes we don't know until we're deep in it. And
sometimes
then we're
that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. And that's what I'm trying to tell you with this podcast and, you know, having this discussion about love and relationships. There's things that we truly just don't know. And the dynamics, honestly, of a man and a woman and a relationship and how that works and how the brains and all the things that they need and we need and then putting it all together and trying to make it all work. And a lot of times, too, as people, we change. We grow, we mature, and some of the things that we, you know, thought we wanted, you know, when we first meet our partners can change as you grow older, you know, and change as you get older. So I totally understand all the dynamics of this. And that's why I'm saying, like, when it comes to relationships, you can go through a relationship that you were in love with and that you felt like this is it. And maybe sometimes things don't work out, right? There's sometimes that things don't work out. But it doesn't mean that we can't find love again. It doesn't mean that we can't heal. It doesn't mean that, you know what, you look back and you think, oh, that was terrible. No, you actually can love someone and not have them in your life anymore as time goes by. So now you're living in LA. So you're like, what just happened to my life? Okay, I don't know what we're gonna do. What happens? What happens with you two?
Well, you know, I think part of the mind F of it all too was this narrative about women and age, and that really like reared its head because I was 35 that year, and so now I'm thinking, oh, I'm 35 and no one's gonna want an old woman, and so which I laugh at.
You laugh now, right?
I laugh now. I'm like, gosh, 35, how lucky! Like that's the perfect time. But I went to LA just devastated, and the person who's supposed to love me left me, and now who wants these used goods, and who am I?
So you went through a really hard time.
I did. Yeah. I did. And you know, this was when I met my husband, there was no dating apps. Maybe there was Match.com or something.
Right.
But I found out about the dating apps, and so I kind of jumped on apps more. And I hate to say this, but I think a lot of women do, and I think a lot of us maybe will go through a hoe phase after a divorce. Yeah. But it was like, I need to feel wanted. And so I started going out with guys, and I learned very quickly that the age thing didn't matter. Like, there were plenty of guys.
No. I always tell women, I'm like, listen, it's not about age. No. It's not about height. It's not about weight.
Yeah, none of it.
I mean, there's somebody for everyone. People are attracted to different things. There's different energies.
So
there's
true.
Yeah. There's it all.
Yeah. So I went through that, and it was, and I was still married, and I would tell the guy, you know, I was like, I don't know, I'm still married. Yep, I'm married, and this is what it is. This is not looking for a relationship. I was on the dating apps not looking for a relationship. I was looking for fun. I was looking to feel wanted. I was looking to feel sexy.
Right.
And after enough of that, you get tired.
You got tired.
So tired. And about 6 months into the separation, my ex-husband drives up to LA. Okay. He pulls out the wedding ring. He comes to my place. He pulls out my ring, and I was like, "What is that?" Because I think I'd handed it back to him. I'm like, here, you know.
So you handed it back. And so now it's 6 months. And what was your mind frame? Were you thinking we're not getting back together? You're not sure? You know. You're just giving it time? Where were you at the time?
The first month or two, I fantasized about him coming back and doing that kind of thing. Like begging for me back and saying he wanted to work it out. After 6 months. Yeah. Of processing with my girlfriend and going out on dates and counseling. Yeah.
You did it all.
I was starting to just like my life and love it out there. And I had my own apartment, and it was decorated really girly. And so he comes along, and I'm thinking, I don't know how you fit into this anymore. I'm not really sure if you fit into my new life. And I have new friends, and I've done some deep work, and I've grieved you. And it's almost like if someone dies and finally after years of grieving, you work through it, and then they come back, and it's like, even if you wanted that to happen, it's kind of jarring.
Because you changed.
Yes.
Because you changed.
Yeah.
You actually looked at life differently. Yeah. Kind of different needs.
And in that 6 months, we hadn't been communicating.
No.
So it wasn't as if he had been messaging me. In my mind, he was off with the girl and things were great. So he comes back.
Oh, so you really weren't talking?
No. Yeah, and a lot of times when I was dating the guys, they're like, "Are you divorced?" I go, "I don't think so. I haven't got any papers, but I don't even know." I told him, if you want to do it, do it. But as far as I know, like, the last I had talked to him was he wanted a divorce, and I was like, "Cool, you do that."
Okay. That's right. You're right. Yeah. Okay, so he said, "I want a divorce," so that's when you took off. Okay.
Yeah.
So now 6 months go by.
6 months go by, and he shows up with the ring, and I'm just confused. I felt very confused and conflicted.
Okay.
Because I had wanted that reconciliation. I had wanted that, but suddenly I'm loving my life, loving my place. I'm looking at my apartment. It's decorated girly. I'm like, I don't want you moving into my place. And, you know, one of the things I started talking to my counselor, I said, I don't know what to do because this is what I wanted, but I don't know anymore. I don't know if this is what I want. I don't know if he is who I want. I've gone out with a bunch of other guys, and now I see that there's other people. Maybe I want other people. And she said, what do you need to see from him that he needs to do to even consider the relationship again? And I was like, I don't know. What if he does it and I don't want him? She goes, well, he needs to do these things in order for you to even consider.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, I need to see that he is going to counseling himself, that he gets a job, because at this point we had been working together, and I basically just threw him out of the company.
Okay.
And then he moves out of his dad's house because I found out he had moved in with his dad after him and the girl broke up.
Okay.
And those were the 3 things I needed to see, just to even consider.
Yeah. You're like, I just want to see what's okay.
And I remember telling my mom after, I go, this is what I need to see. She goes, don't be so hard on him. I said, Mom, if I was just dating a random guy and I said he doesn't have a job and lives with his dad, would you think I was being hard on him?
Right. 100%.
So like, I think the minimum things are that, and that he deals with why he did this in the first place.
Right.
So that was, he came out, he gave me the ring. I didn't accept it. And I said, let's just kind of like, let's tiptoe through this. Maybe we can date. Like, you can come to Christmas with the family or something. So it was a weird, like, we tried to date.
Time. Yeah. Okay.
And he was living in Vegas. Okay. So I flew to Vegas for Christmas. We went on a date, and it just felt off,
you know,
things.
Now,
yeah.
Right?
And he was trying really, really hard. And he started texting me all the time. And I told him, I said, look, I felt like this plant that had been neglected, the plant's dying. And then all of a sudden, instead of just a little water, you're just dumping a bucket of water on it. And I'm like, that's not how you get a plant back to life. And that's what it felt like to me. It was just nothing.
Like,
and then
so suffocating.
Yes.
Like, because we haven't really talked.
Yes.
We haven't done anything. Now you want to get back together.
Yep.
I'm still in the process.
Yeah. And so so now like Christmas happens, January, and I'm just kind of watching from afar. And I said, like, stop texting me. Just in my mind, I'm like, I just want to see action. I want to see her doing something, not messaging me. I want to see her going to counseling.
But at the time, it seems like your heart wasn't. Where were you at that time?
My heart was confused.
It was interesting. I want people to hear this because I feel like there's so many of us that have gone through something similar to this.
Yeah.
And there's that point that we're like, I don't know, like, how can I trust again?
Yeah.
Or is this even something that I want to? Or how can I go through this?
Yeah.
So, you were right there.
Back to like the gut thing, like with the gut of feeling like the phone. It was almost like I had this gut feeling that I should get a divorce.
Really?
But I logically couldn't wrap my mind around it.
Okay.
Because I was thinking, and I was a speaker, and I thought, oh, this would be a great story on stage, like how we reconciled, and we could make this could be really powerful to share.
Because you were still working and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
What were you guys, before we go there, what were you doing at the time?
We had a network marketing business. We
Okay.
sold skincare, and I would speak and travel, and I had an online business too.
Okay.
And so
you guys were known, like, to be together.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
You were very public at the time,
Yes.
too. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was another thing, like, oh, how am I going to tell the story? But
Yeah.
maybe it's going to be a good story
Yes.
in the sense of, okay.
Yeah, so I thought, well, maybe if once he gets through this, we can share how we saved our marriage. And so I was thinking, like, this could be a great story, but some part of me was just not feeling it. And I remember driving out to Vegas to see him, and I was crying.
Okay.
And I said, you know what? I feel like my heart is telling me to split up, but my brain is telling me not to. And he goes, no, your heart is telling you to stay and your brain is telling you. And I said, no.
No.
I said, honestly, my brain is convinced this could work. Like, we've been good before. We've had a good relationship. We can make this work.
Right.
But something inside me was just like, no.
Your corazón, your heart.
And what was interesting was I just kept sitting with that, and I didn't know what to do. And my girlfriend said, you'll know when you know.
Okay.
Because when you're in the middle of it, it just feels like you want an answer right now.
Right.
Like, do I need a divorce? Do I need to stay together?
Right.
Like, I just need some.
You want that clarity.
Yes.
You usually don't get that clarity, but you
Yeah.
have that uncertainty.
Yes.
It's so scary. It's like, okay, yes, I need some clarity here, but sometimes you're not going to get the clarity.
Yeah.
And the clarity is...
It was so uncomfortable to sit in it and not knowing, and...
I wonder if that was the clarity.
And well, I found the clarity, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So I was so uncomfortable, and I just kept getting this gut feeling that I needed to end it.
Listen to your gut.
I know.
Like, seriously, look at the times that you already talked about.
I know.
How the first time something was there,
Yep.
you knew it, and now something's here again.
Yep.
Okay.
So in my mind, I kind of was giving him until June, right?
Okay.
So another 6 months. I was like,
Okay.
it will be a whole year, and by that time, I should know. However, it was the end of April.
Yes.
And he still was trying to message me, and he still hadn't, I think he'd gone to counseling twice.
Okay.
And of course, this is like December when I had asked. So I'm like, he had gone to counseling twice. He was still living with his dad, still didn't have a job. So in my mind, I'm like, it's getting close to June and nothing has really changed. Right. But I had unfriended him on all social media. However, I went to go look at his page just because, you stalk people.
Yeah, of course you do. Of course we stalk.
And I saw this girl had tagged him. And it was just a picture of like it was like a group of friends, like 4 people, some hands and drinks. But I saw the girl who tagged him. And so I clicked on her profile, and I noticed it was an Instagram that was like reposted to Facebook.
Yeah.
So I just go look at her Instagram page, and I see pictures of them together. Like they're a couple. Yeah.
He's not telling you
No.
this. No, of course.
At this point, he had told me, I'm going to do whatever it takes as long as it takes.
Whatever it takes, yeah.
And I saw a picture of like a little Starbucks cup, and she wrote, oh, he bought me coffee and,
Right.
and flowers.
The whole
And this is a completely different girl.
new one.
And I was like, oh my God. And so I sent him a text right then.
Okay.
I just said, hey, we need to file. And he just wrote back, wow. And And I said, why wow? And he said, it's hard to see, that's all. And I said, this is hard to see. And I sent him a screenshot of the picture of him and the girl.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was like, look, if you couldn't wait that long, if you couldn't figure it out, then like, what are we doing?
What are we doing?
So we filed. I drove down there. We filed, and it was done in 7 days. And we actually went to dinner after. I was like, let's celebrate. And he was like, why are we celebrating? I'm like, because I don't want to be sad anymore. I'm so tired of being, this is like sad. And I don't know why he did that one. Again, I think it's back to he just didn't want to deal with any of the underlying things. And so I just couldn't keep waiting around. And I was like, that was my answer.
Right.
That was the answer. It was clear. I hated it,
He
but it was
obviously
clear.
was confused.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He obviously was confused.
And so fast forward to where I am now.
Wow. So hold on.
yeah.
Hold on. No. So then that was it.
Yeah.
So you guys actually ended up getting divorced.
Yep.
And did you stay in LA?
I did.
Okay. So
Yep.
you just kind of got a divorce.
Yep.
And then what was it like for you? Like after you got divorced? Because I know you said you dated for a moment, but you were kind of like testing the water. So now you're like, I'm officially divorced.
Yeah.
Were you like, forget it, never again? You're like, done.
I was
Where were you at that
I
time?
was definitely not interested in any relationship. I was still like, yeah, maybe I'll be interested in a year or two.
Yeah,
but I was just so heartbroken.
Yes.
And I don't know. I was scared. I didn't know what was possible for relationships. I just remember thinking, I need to be single for a couple of years.
Right.
You're
like, I want to be single.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah.
Because you said to me earlier, when you grew up, I know you made a comment to me, you said that you never really like thought about getting married or anything like that.
Yeah.
How did you grow up? Like, did you see your
Yeah.
parents? Like, so were your parents married, or were you able to see good relationships, not good relationships? What happened there when you were?
My parents were married and they got divorced when I was 8. But then they remarried each other 3 years later. So second grade, they got divorced.
Okay.
And then my brother and my mom moved to California to live with my grandparents.
Okay.
And my dad stayed in Las Vegas, which was where we had grown up.
Okay.
And then 5th grade, I don't know how there was no internet. They must have been talking on the phone or something.
How they do it? Yeah.
But
right?
all of a sudden, my mom said, we're getting remarried, and we moved back to Vegas. So for 3 years, fully divorced.
Fully divorced.
Yeah.
You guys are doing your own thing. Then
Yep.
they get back.
Yes.
And then did they end up staying together?
Yeah, they did stay together.
stayed
And
together.
there were many times, my dad had a gambling addiction, and that's why they got divorced.
Okay.
He really just lost all the money from the family.
Right.
And it was,
your mother, she couldn't compete with the gambling.
yeah, it was a whole, just as bad as any addiction, alcohol or anything.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so he promised to never gamble again, and they got together. But there were relapses, and there was a lot of over the years, a lot of just,
ups and downs.
roller coaster. And so, I looked at that and I saw a lot of my friends growing up in the 90s, a lot of divorce and a lot of latchkey kids.
Yep.
And I just didn't see a lot of happy relationships.
Yeah. And love and how
and
they really made it work
yeah.
in that juicy way.
Totally. So my parents, they stayed together, but during my teenage years, I remember looking at them like, why?
Why are you guys together? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I know, right?
So, and as they got older, I appreciated their relationship and how they made things work. But my teenage years, I was like, these two, why would I want that?
Right. So that's why then you had that kind of view of like, you're not necessarily want to get married.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're kind of like, I'm not sure.
And then, like I said, when I met my husband and when we were married, I was so in.
You were in.
And that's what was so heartbreaking after was I thought this was right. And I remember talking to women who've been divorced.
Yeah.
And they were like, man, when I walked down the aisle, I knew I shouldn't. And for me,
they had the feeling. Like,
yeah.
They didn't want to. Okay, but they still did it. Yeah.
And I remember walking down the aisle, and I remember standing at the end of the aisle. Because this was like the moment I'd hear people say, like, I knew in that moment. And I was like, I was in that moment, and I felt like, yes, this is right.
This is right.
And that's what felt so gutting about being so wrong. Mm-hmm. I felt like I could not trust myself because I'm like, if my gut told me it was right, if I was with this person and I
felt
knew,
right.
then how could I be so wrong?
Right.
And how could I be with someone again? Like, that just... It was terrifying.
That's what I'm saying. So now, so now you're going forward. So now finally you're like, I wasn't sure about getting married, but this one was, I want to get married.
Yes.
We got married. It was great. Then things happened.
Yeah.
And now you find yourself single.
Yeah.
And you had this kind of like, I'm not sure. I don't even know. So you kind of like had this hard look on love. Maybe not sure if this is going to happen again.
Yeah. I made a conscious decision about this was I did not want to be a man hater. I didn't want to.
I love that.
I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be bitter and be like, every man's a cheater. And and I had to be really conscious to not be that person. Because I think I see women like that. I see women in their 30s and they're just like, every dude, you can't trust it.
Yeah, guys are jerks. Yeah. And that really starts shaping, you know, how you think, how you feel about men. It can be really negative.
So I really made a conscious decision to not be that, but it didn't mean that I wasn't still hurt.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean that I wanted to jump into anything.
You were like, no, I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so then after you got that divorce and now you're single, fast forward.
Yeah, fast forward.
How did you meet?
So it was about 2.5 years. I remember it was probably about 6 months before I met Jeff. I was telling my friend, I said, I'm starting to be open to the idea of a relationship. So I'm like, I'm not open yet, but I'm open to the idea of, I'm starting to even think about thinking about it. So it was like a level, you know.
And during that time though, Mama, did you do some counseling? Did you?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were doing some personal work on your own.
Yeah. I was in counseling the whole time. Off and on, at least the whole time.
Okay.
And I started to, this was another thing about being single was I thought, this is my time to travel.
Okay.
Things that I maybe wanted to do that I never did. So I took that time to really try to nourish myself.
Okay.
So I was living out of a suitcase. I was traveling all over the place. And I was thinking, I'll live in this place for a month. I'll live in this place for a month because maybe I don't want to be in LA. Okay. So I stayed in Nashville. I stayed in Austin. I went to Boise. And so I was like, this is the only time in my life where I'm going to be able to do this, so I better take advantage of it now.
Take advantage of it.
Yeah. While I'm still...
You want to be free.
Yes.
And just kind of do your thing.
Yep.
And kind of figure out where you really want, right?
Yep. And I also started to think LA is an interesting place. And I remember I kept saying, my husband is not in LA, which is ironic because I ended up meeting Jeff in LA. But I was like, my husband doesn't live in LA. I don't he's not here. So I'm trying to find where I want to go.
Okay.
And so my goal.
Because you think eventually, if I'm going to get this man, he's not going to be in LA. Totally. Where am I going? I always tell women, I said, listen, great men are everywhere.
It's so true.
They're everywhere.
It's so true. I was that was definitely a story.
Right.
I
that
said,
was a story.
I need to be in like a smaller town.
Yep.
So I was like, I got to go to Texas or Tennessee or something. So my goal was to move to either Austin or Nashville in June.
Okay.
Ended up meeting Jeff in February. So a few months before.
In LA.
Yeah. But I actually had, so the funny story of it was I have a podcast.
Okay.
And I had really wanted Bumble to be a sponsor of our podcast. Okay. Because our podcast is about friendships, but it was also about our relationship.
It was.
And Bumble has Bumble Business, Bumble BFF, so you can meet friends, and then the dating.
Oh.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really? So they have like a way that you meet friends?
Yes, they
and
do.
It's like legit? Like
yep, it's called Bumble BFF, and you can meet girls and have coffee dates. So I thought this would be a perfect sponsor for a podcast. Yeah. And
mention your podcast.
It's called The Best Life Podcast. Okay,
The Best Life Podcast. So,
and The Best Life is really about the crappiest things that can ever happen to you in life, and yet you can still decide to make the best out of it.
That's fantastic.
So
you're like, okay, so I have this Best Life podcast, and then I want Bumble to be.
I wanted Bumble to be the sponsor. Okay. And so Bumble was hosting a the Super Bowl, a Super Bowl party in Las Vegas, and I happened to be in town. And I showed up because I wanted to kind of schmooze with the girl who worked at Bumble. So I thought if I could become friends with her, I could like get her to sponsor.
Yeah.
So I showed up to the party and she wasn't there. Okay. And there were two girls that were, I guess, just volunteers. And in order to get a free drink ticket, they said you need to swipe on Bumble twice and then we'll give you a ticket. Okay. And I had already swiped through all the girls and all the Bumble BFFs, but I did not want to be on the dating site.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I need a free drink though. So
yeah.
I open it up, I do the swipes, I show them, they give me the drink ticket. So I get a drink and I just go sit on a bench and I'm just staring around the room. I'm alone.
Yeah.
I don't have any friends there. And I'm like, this is so dumb. The girl who I wanted, like the whole reason I hear she's not here.
Yeah.
And then I just thought, maybe, like, I'm kind of curious who's here.
Okay.
I'm kind of curious who's on Bumble.
Yeah.
And I was in Vegas, which I knew my ex-husband had moved back. So I'm like, I wonder if he's on Bumble.
Yeah, I know, right? Like,
so I'm like, let's see what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
So I just start swiping on the date, you know? Okay. And out of like boredom, honestly. And I was about to delete it and I was flying to LA the next day to see my girlfriend. And I land in LA and I go, let's just swipe for a few minutes to see who's here. And I set my radius at like 2 miles. I was going to be.
It's like from, yeah.
So I was going to be there for a week. And I'm like, I don't have time to go on a date. I had stuff I was doing. But out of whatever, I thought maybe I could sneak in a date or two. Yeah. Mostly because she had just started seeing somebody. And I was getting the pressure because I felt like a third wheel.
Was this the same one when you guys first?
Yes.
Oh no!
Yes.
So your girlfriend with the both divorced
yes.
at the beginning. Okay.
So she had just started seeing somebody about 8 or 9 months before, and I felt like I was getting the pressure that I needed to have a boyfriend or something.
Okay, I gotta go now.
Yeah. So I felt like I was third wheeling all the time, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll go on a date while I'm here. You know, I was staying with her and her boyfriend when I visited. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get a date or two just for a free dinner. Like, honestly, that was it. I'm like, I'll get a free dinner while I'm visiting.
Really, like, wanted to
yeah. I was
I'm a little boy.
yeah.
Honest. You're like, I'm a little boy.
Yeah. I was in the space of I'm open to the idea, not looking, and if I could get a free meal while I'm in town for a week, that'd be great. And so
she said, but I don't want to meet my man. Yeah. Like that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
So I ended up matching with Jeff. I matched with a couple people.
You did.
And I almost completely ignored. Like after I got all these matches, I'm like, I feel exhausted thinking about messaging these guys. Right. So I was about to let them expire. On Bumble, it's like they get 24 hours. If you don't message, they expire.
Okay.
And the guys can also pay for an extension to extend for another 24 hours.
Okay.
So I did not answer his message. And then I saw right when it was about to expire, he extended on me.
He extended.
And I thought, oh, now I got to talk to this guy.
Okay.
So he extended on me and I messaged him and he actually asked me out and I canceled. I said yes. And that whole week, my girlfriend and I, we were about to leave to Costa Rica to go on this ayahuasca retreat.
Okay.
And ayahuasca is it's a plant psychedelic medicine. We were going to go to Costa Rica.
Big deal. And you guys have to like, you were going to do it with somebody that was going to administer it or how to do it. Okay.
It's a whole thing. You'll have to, if you don't know, you'll have to look it up. But
I've known people that have done it.
Yeah.
So if you guys have never heard of it, it's like it's a thing. You do it with somebody. You go somewhere. Okay.
So we were going to Costa Rica, and I was just stressed out about it. I was, it's
didn't know what to expect.
Didn't know what to expect. I was really honestly freaking out, and so he asked me to go out, and last minute I told him he'll never let me live this down, but I guess I told him that I had to go to Target to return some things. So he's like, okay.
Okay, that's really important. Like, wow, you gotta go to Target. Okay.
And I canceled because, and I did have to go to Target, but I was just like, I don't have the mental capacity to go on a date.
The whole thing to him, because you were just not right there.
Yep. And you're not supposed to drink before you go, and I'm like, I don't know if I could go on a date without drinking. So
you're supposed to be clean and
clear. So canceled it, went to Costa Rica for a week, and what was really interesting was that time, what I went to Costa Rica for, they want you to set an intention.
Okay.
And the ayahuasca is used for a lot of healing. Mm-hmm. And so my intention was to heal my broken heart. Oh. I felt like I still had a little bit of residue. Like it had been over 2 years since the divorce, or about 2 years. Yeah. But I was still feeling like
something.
Just not fully healed yet.
Got it.
And so that week was really, really healing. Mm-hmm. And I came back. We landed. We were at LAX waiting for our bags. Mm-hmm. And Jeff texted me. And I was like, how does he know that I'm here?
How does he know I'm here? He's following me.
And he texted me. And I was like, oh, how'd you know? I just landed. Yeah. And he asked me out again. And I had originally planned on leaving. So I was like, I'll never meet these people. Like, I'm leaving again. Right. I was leaving town. And my girlfriend and I decided to stay one extra night so she could see her boyfriend. Yeah. And so I was like, well, I'm going to be here another night. I don't want to be a third wheel with them. Nope. So, like, let's do dinner. I'll get a free meal, and that'll be it.
Okay, so that you're still thinking, I'm just going to go. Okay. You're like.
So it was just, it's a quick, like, all right, we'll do it. And so I went out and met him, and we just really hit it off. And we had a lot to talk about.
What was your first impression of Minnesota?
I remember just being really anxious.
Okay.
I don't know why. And maybe it had been because I hadn't been dating as much. Mm-hmm. And I was starting to be more intentional about dating instead of like, I don't care who this guy is, I just want to hook up. Mm-hmm. And so I think because I was reading his profile before, I met him, like, I think I could really like this guy. Okay. And I think that was more scary.
Okay.
Like knowing you could just like say goodbye to a dude and you don't care was not a big deal, but
there was something.
Yeah, like I was like,
profile.
Yeah.
Because I'm just saying, like, so if, for our listeners, for ladies that are like, well, I'm single now, I've gone through a heartache or, breakup, and I'm not sure, but I'm open. I'm open to maybe the possibility again to meeting someone.
Yeah.
What would you say to her? What really was it? The profile? Was it just maybe your heart? Was it enough time?
I think the profile, I looked at profiles different that time around. I will. Okay. Yeah. Because before it was like, how do they look? And I didn't really care about anything else. Okay. Yeah. But reading, like, there are things in the profiles. They could say what they wanted. Do they want kids? Do they want to get married? Do they, that kind of stuff.
Intentional.
So I was definitely looking, like, if it's set, I think on Bubble too, and it's been a few years, but it was like, do they want to hook up? Do they? And so if people were open to hook up, I didn't swipe on them.
Okay.
2 years before I would have, I didn't care.
You didn't care, yeah.
So I could tell he was wanting something a little more serious. And so that was like, ooh, this is a little different, and maybe this is, and I still wasn't necessarily looking for that yet. But again, you said you were, I was opening to it. Mm-hmm.
And do you feel that you finally were starting to be open because you did give yourself some time?
I think
Mama,
so.
you think so? You gave yourself time to do the healing, to kind of just see what was going on. And then you had you did a little fun dating too. Not like really wanting to find someone, just kind of get yourself out there. Okay, so you meet this guy, you're like, so now you're like, huh.
Yeah. Well, I met him, and it also said in my profile that I said I'm open to a relationship, but I don't know how.
Oh.
And part of that was all my traveling, because I wasn't living anywhere yet. I was living out of a suitcase.
You really didn't have a home base.
No, I didn't. And so, I stayed with friends in LA. I stayed with friends in different cities. And so when I met...
What was his situation? Was he like, did he have his place?
Yeah.
Was he working? Where was he?
So ironically, he was kind of in the same boat as I was.
No!
So he was like, well, I'm kind of living out of a suitcase too. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh. And so ironically, I was like, well, we'll definitely never see each other.
Right.
And this is where things really got interesting. So I was leaving the next day.
Okay.
I was supposed to fly to Vegas with my girlfriend, and then we were going to stay in Vegas one night and drive to Utah for some work stuff.
Yeah.
It's happened once every 10 years.
Yeah.
It snowed in Vegas and in Utah, and so we couldn't get to Utah, so we got stuck in Vegas. He was supposed to have a meeting in Vegas the next day. So basically, I went out on a date with him in LA on Monday.
Okay, you went out on a date on Monday.
On Monday, flew to Vegas the next day, got stuck there. Wednesday, I'm still in Vegas because I'm stuck there. And he reaches out. He's like, hey, I'm going to be in Vegas. I was like, well, I'm still here. So we ended up going on a second date 2 days later in Vegas. So Monday, LA, Wednesday, Vegas. And then I went to Austin for a couple weeks, came back. But what happened was we kept ending up in the same cities.
Yeah.
And it was actually about 3 months in.
Okay.
I had a video view thing in New York, and I invited him. Said, hey, I'd love for you to come.
Because you're still, so at the time, you're working. Yeah. You're traveling. You're doing, you said the podcast?
I was doing the podcast. Yep.
What else you got? You're
doing just online business.
So you're doing all the things.
Yep.
Okay.
And so there was a mini documentary that I was in, and they were doing a showing at the Tribeca Film Festival. So I invited him to go, and my girlfriend and I had this little podcast meetup, and I said, hey, would you like to go? And he goes, yeah, I could use a trip to New York. I have some meetings I could do out there. Yeah. So we went to New York. He came, stayed with me and my girlfriend. Now, the day we all left, she was leaving super early in the morning. He was leaving super in the morning, and I was leaving at like 4 p.m. Yeah. And I go, man, I didn't realize everybody was leaving, so maybe I'll leave early too. Yeah. So I went to the airport with him. I went to Southwest counter. He was flying to Knoxville or somewhere in Tennessee. Yeah. I think in Knoxville. And I was going to fly back to Vegas. Okay. So I went to Southwest and I said, can I do same day standby? So they put me on a flight. The flight was supposed to go from New York to Nashville, Nashville to Vegas.
Okay, got it.
Not my original flight.
Okay.
He leaves. I'm like, bye.
Bye-bye.
Yep. I get on my flight.
But you like him.
Yeah. I do like him. But we weren't official yet. It was just
you kind of like a couple dates, yeah.
So I get on my flight, my not original flight, fly to Nashville. I land in Nashville like 9 a.m. And they said, hey, the next flight is completely full. We're not going to get you to Vegas until 10 p.m. Oh. And so I'm like, it's 9 a.m. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to sit at the airport for 12 hours.
All day.
So I go, well, Nashville's great. Maybe I'll just find a place for my bag and I'll just go around Nashville.
Right.
So I text him, and he had just flown to Knoxville, Tennessee. I text him and I was like, hey, I'm here at the airport and I'm just going to, he goes, no way. He goes, we're actually on our way to Nashville right now. So I guess he went to Knoxville to see his buddy.
What?
Or no, maybe it's Chattanooga.
Okay.
Somewhere else.
Okay.
And they just decided, you know what, let's drive to Nashville.
No.
So he was already on his way, and he ended up.
Didn't know that.
No, I wasn't even supposed to be on that flight. I was not even
Really?
supposed to be on that flight. So him and his friend, they got there like 2 hours later. They picked me up from the airport. The three of us hung around Nashville, drove around on scooters all day, and then he just dropped me off that night. And I was like, okay, that was too weird. Like that
didn't make any sense.
Yes.
There's something, the divine energy here. Something's going on.
Because I had status on Southwest, and I could do same day standby. I've never missed it's never been full. There's always room for me.
Right.
The one time they're like, we don't have room, and you're stuck here. Yeah. And I was stuck there for 12 hours. And then he had just left in the morning to get to Chattanooga, and they were like, let's just drive to Nashville. Let's just have a day at Nashville.
Come on. If that wasn't meant,
yes.
Something was there. Did you think, though, seriously? I know we can talk about it
Yeah.
now, but in the moment when you were there and after you got back on the plane,
Yeah.
Did you think, oh my goodness?
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
That was the moment, that flight, and that day when we hung out and I left, and I was like, okay, this is somehow working out. And that was my whole thing when I said I would like a relationship, but I don't know how. It was like that. And I go, how does something like that happen?
Yeah.
How do we just like finding each other in different cities, and this is working out? And it was really that trip that I go, like, it was like, I guess we're kind of serious. And I invited him to another trip I went on, a retreat where I was speaking, and he showed up, and the girls there were like, oh, is this your boyfriend? And that was the first time anybody said, and they kept saying they were introducing him as my boyfriend. And so that night I was like, so how do you feel about them calling you that?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's great. And that was kind of like, hey, I guess it's official. And then it turned into whenever he's going somewhere, like finding a way for me to tag along or him to tag along. And pretty soon we were just like merging our travel schedules and making it work.
You guys were making it work. So so at the time, were you exclusive with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was.
And so did you guys have that conversation? Like,
we did have that conversation, and it was also a little bit assumed, I think, because I guess we did have the conversation probably a few weeks in, because at after the second date, I think he still was dating.
Okay, yeah.
And I had maybe seen a few people.
Yeah.
And then it just turned into, like we're exclusive.
So you guys knew that you guys were exclusive.
Yeah.
He didn't officially ask you to.
No, he didn't officially ask me. It was more like that when all the girls were calling him my boyfriend. Yeah. It was like, is this what we are now?
And then he was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we're officially.
Yeah.
So were you thinking then by that point, like, this was the one that you wanted to, like, be?
I mean,
where are you at this? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I was really still scared.
You were scared.
It was like, this is, what's funny is, so my girlfriend, her name's Jill.
Okay.
And Jill and I had talked, ad nauseum about what would happen in our next relationship and what we want different. And we said things like, it will be so easy. Of course I want to be in love again. Of course it's going to be fine. But these fears came up, these insecurities were coming up, this, like, the dating and the phone stuff, which I had never thought about before. So, there was a point, actually, after we had kind of decided we were together, I was freaking out. I'm like, I would like to see your DMs and, like, I want to see your phone. And
that was that had everything to do with already your past. Yes, things that have happened to you. And which I think people need to give themselves a little grace. Yeah. That little grace there, because I think, and especially if you go through a heartache, you go through a breakup like that, when you've been betrayed. Yeah. And even though you can, like, go to therapy and go through time, everything does come up when seriously, like, when you're in a romantic relationship, that's a reflection on all the things. Like, everything will start coming up. That's actually how a lot of us get able to actually take the next step and heal, is when you are working it through. Because when you're by yourself, right? Like, think about that. When you're by yourself, ladies, you can only do so much. But when you have another person, that's a whole different ball game.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a whole different, like, oh, okay, there's somebody else here to consider.
Yep.
So even though you're falling for this guy,
Yep.
and there must have been something about him that was really clicking with you, that you could tell that maybe he was a good guy or something different than the other guys, right?
Yeah.
But that's still
Yes.
brought up. So I just want to say this. So that's very normal.
Yeah.
You know, right, Jenny? Like, that's normal that things can, like, you get scared as women. You know?
Totally.
How did you work that through, Mama?
Well, it's like what you said is it's to talk about it in theory is so different than like it's like practicing versus like talking about it. You know, it's like on the job training versus like reading about something. You know,
relationships bring it all up.
Yes. So of course, in theory, I got this. It's going to be fine. I'm not going to be jealous. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to open my whole heart. And then it's like, if I open my whole heart, it can be broken again. Yeah. And you don't ever want to be, when you're blindsided, you're like, what did I miss? Yeah. So you're looking for things like, I'm going to spot it so I don't get,
spot it. Yes. It's a different mentality.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm starting to feel things for him, which is scary. So then I'm looking like, is he doing something that I'm looking for cheating before it even starts, because you don't want to be blindsided again. You don't want to feel stupid again. And so, and his ex-wife also had an affair.
Oh, so so you guys, my goodness.
So we both bonded over that. But as we started to like really have feelings for each other, it was like he and I'd been dating a bunch of guys, so there were still dudes in my phone that would hit me up every once in a while, like, they'd message me like, what you doing? And so there was. And I called it whack-a-mole. I said in the middle, I was trying to get rid of all the guys that I'm like, I'm not interested in them, but they're still hitting me up. They don't know. And so it was this middle time of our relationship of like, I do want to be with you. These other guys, I'm trying to whack-a-mole down. Like, I'm not interested in them. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, but are they, are there girls that are your? So I know we had this moment. We were at my girlfriend's house.
Yes.
And I think it was me. I wanted to see his phone. I'm like, I want to see your DMs. Mm-hmm. So he's like, sure. And so we basically handed each other our phones, like, look at my Instagram DMs, look through my texts. Mm-hmm. It was just this anxiety because I constantly, if there was anything, I'd be like looking over his shoulder. Who are you talking to? What are there other conversations?
Were you able to talk? Like, it seems like, were you able to keep it this real with him?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is something that actually really helped you, that you were actually dating a guy that was also being understanding from your past? Because he was in a situation that he went through the same thing. Yeah. Because another dude would be like a total jerk.
Totally.
Right? So there was something special about him, Mama, that he was like, okay, I'm not doing anything. But if this is what I want to say. You found the right person when you can actually go through your insecurities and your things also with that person and have that rawness. Yeah. And even though that probably was really weird for you and scary, right? Yeah. He had space for that. Yeah. Was he like able to kind of work? I'm sure that was something so helpful. So ladies, so listen, so if you're dating, right? I want to say this. Yep. So if you're dating and you're falling for someone, and we all have baggage, you guys. We all have shit and stuff that's happened to us, good and bad in relationships. But if you are feeling that insecurity and you're with someone, I will always say to everyone, be honest. Yeah. Like, tell them. I'd rather you say, okay, I know this is weird, maybe, don't judge me, but like, it makes me feel better right now that I can look at your phone. Yeah. That's the flag. Like, if you have that person like, oh, no, something's off there. So I loved that he was giving you that space, Danny.
I needed it.
I know.
And
sometimes we do. We need that, and then that's okay. We don't have to. That's actually okay.
And we had a conversation around it because there was just so much anxiety all the time. Yeah. And there was like, I hated myself for it because I didn't want to feel that way. I'm like, I want to trust you. And I'm so mad at my ex because I never thought about this before. And now it feels like this.
Now it's like thing. Something,
Yeah.
And it's always here kind of.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to think this, but I am. And I can't help it. Yeah. And so we had some really deep conversations around it. And I also recognized that it could be annoying and crazy and kind of psychotic if I was constantly like, who are you talking to? Who are you
Of
talking
course.
to? Because if
Absolutely.
I felt if it went the other way around and he was accusing me, I would be like, yo, chill, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, it could get to the point that it's totally unhealthy.
So we made this kind of agreement.
Okay.
We said, at any time, you can ask to see my phone or I can ask to see yours. However, you have to ask yourself, am I wanting to see it because I'm feeling insecure or is it because I'm doing something shady? And because I said, I don't want to punish you for what my ex did to me, and I don't want to be punished for what your ex did to you. Because what she did to you is not my fault, and what he did to me is not your fault.
Right.
And so we came to that agreement, and it since, hasn't been an issue. We haven't even asked to see the phones. Right. He has my password, I have his password, but it's the fact that we can, and we know that it's there. And I think I also, because I know what he went through and he knows what I went through, that we kind of can hold that space. And I also told him, I said, if I am constantly asking you and wanting to, I don't want to be in this relationship.
Right.
Because that's going to annoy both of us.
Right. I think, do you feel like it was just like in the beginning, like it was a period in the beginning of what I call just adjusting to each other.
Yeah.
Adjusting to each other and being that vulnerability.
Yeah. I think it was the adjustment period, and it was just the fear because it
was a fear.
It was the first person I cared about and that I could see a possible future with, and somebody that I wanted to be around, and that was terrifying.
Right.
Because I hadn't had that since my ex-husband.
Right. And you haven't had that, and you were like, I don't want to be in love again.
Yeah.
And this is not going to work out. Like you said, that we go from the beginning. There's no guarantee.
No.
There's no guarantee, but we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be able to also listen to, again, back to our gut to say, is it something that's me? Am I being insecure right now? Or is it, did I get myself another one that's going to,
exactly.
It's kind of like that balance right there. I mean, I always feel like in relationships, it's not a straight line.
Yeah.
There's not a straight line.
Yep.
Okay, so moving forward then, oh my goodness. So you guys got through this, obviously. You guys got through this. How are you now? Like, what is life like now with you and him? You're engaged.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like, I'm thinking right now, I would love to hear that whole story too. I know we only have so much time. I get that. But for our listeners, for people again that are like listening to the story about yours, I love that you're able to be, first of all, thank you for being so open and honest. This is so helpful.
Yeah.
And able to, be married before, thinking this was it, going through that, being single and opening up your heart again. Because I always believe, like, for me, I always say, it doesn't matter if you've been married before. It doesn't matter if you haven't been married. It doesn't matter your age. I mean, love is available. Love is available to all of us. And love is not just necessarily one time.
Yeah.
You can fall in love more than once in your life.
Yeah.
I know that to be true.
Yeah.
I've fallen in love more than once.
Yeah.
I'm on my second marriage, and I understand that. But what would you say for, women that are like, I don't know, maybe it's not in the cards for me.
Yeah.
How did you really allow yourself to open up? Because now you guys, you're good, girlfriend? Like, how is your life with him now?
There's so many gifts that came out of the first marriage and the trauma of it.
Yes.
But you have to dig for that, and you have to figure out the parts of you, like the fears that came up, the insecurities that came up, and deal with those. And the beautiful thing about my relationship with Jeff was it wasn't super easy because we both went through that kind of stuff. There are things that he and I have gone through that I feel like we have known each other half as long as my ex-husband and I, but I feel like we've known each other twice or three times as long because our relationship is so much deeper.
It's deeper.
And we would have never had those deep conversations had we not gone through what we've been through. And there are things like gender roles and just the divine masculine, divine feminine, things that I just didn't know about before in my first marriage that I've learned about how to honor a man and respect a man and how to honor myself and things that I had to work through that I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
I was
That's
young,
true.
and you don't know how things fall apart and how they work. And so our relationship now is it's so much deeper and richer because of what we've gone through. And it has been such a blessing to be quite honest. It's funny when I was divorced and single and I'd be on the dating apps, if there was a guy who was in his 40s who was never married, I actually didn't want that. I was like, I need someone who's been through some shit, you know?
No,
I want someone who also gets it.
Yes.
Because it's just a lot. And I need someone who can understand where I'm at. And also I want to know that they've gone through the fire too.
Right.
And he's done a lot of his own work. And there are men out there who also have done the work. Like, you know, you're going to counseling, you're doing your stuff. There's guys who've also done that. Like and he's worked through a lot of his stuff, and he's still willing to work through. And I think one of the things we connected on was we really are both inspired to grow and to grow together. And I think one of the things I see even in my ex-husband now is he's kind of almost still the same person he was 8-9 years ago.
He didn't go on the path of trying to learn and grow and do the whole thing. Not everyone does it. You can't change people. You either decide to do it or not.
Totally. And you know, and even the person that I met, Jeff, and who I was when I met Jeff 4 years ago, is completely different than now. And we've been through some really crazy stuff. You know, a year into a relationship, my mom got sick, and this was very fascinating, at least to my counselor and me. But my mom got sick, and I ended up moving in to help her. So, and this brought up a lot of stuff because Jeff moved in with me. Our relationship was so short, and he moved in to help take care of my sick mother. And I was talking to my counselor. I'm like, I'm so scared because my grandmother ruined my marriage, and I was like, now my mom is going to ruin this relationship that I have. And so I was
grandmother
panicking.
Didn't ruin
no,
she
didn't.
She didn't. Grandma, but you were just, it was like
a
flashback. Oh no, I'm in the same situation. I got a parent or someone that's saying, yes.
So I was caretaking grandmother,
and
this
see
happened.
How that kind of brought that back up again.
It brought up so much, and she was like, Jeff is not the same person as your ex-husband, and like you need to take things at face value and don't start projecting. And so I went through a bit of that too, of thinking like, oh, this is my pattern. My family ruins my relationships. My family ruins everything. And just to be able to allow myself to be taken care of, to see him as someone separate. Those are different scenarios, different situations. But we can so easily get trapped by, this is how things were and this is how they're going to be, or there's patterns and I can't get out of this. And I had to really break that apart. So having support was so helpful. I mean, just having a coach. I had a relationship coach. I had a counselor. Fantastic. You know, I think just having those people on the outside to just talk you through. And I mean, there are so many.
And clearing those love blocks. Like you got to clear those love blocks so you can be open, because be open to him because he's a different man, different time, different place.
Yes. There are so many times my coach talked me out of leaving him, and not because anything he did, just because I know. It's like my freakouts, my insecurities, my feeling like I'm doing something wrong. I'm like, I wanted to just turn and run.
Right.
And she's like, okay, calm down. Let's talk this through.
Calm down. Yeah. See, I'm so happy that you stayed and really worked through that. Yeah. That's what I want women to understand. Yeah. Like sometimes it's not going to be perfect, but follow your heart with this one, because this one was a different man, different time, different place. And you guys are good. You're actually engaged.
We are. We're good. And we're just, we just went to Greece this summer. And that was such a magical, we went for a wedding, and it was really cool to see that and to see love and just talk about, we just laughed because we're like, we could never have a wedding with family. Like,
okay. Yeah.
Our friends brought their family and we're like, our families, no, this is not going to work. But it's just really cool to, just to talk about future and to feel like someone has my back. I think that was a big piece too, is trying to like be a team again and let someone else in instead of, and I think this is a trap we can get into too, is after we've been independent and on our own, like, well, I'm still going to keep my stuff and you keep your stuff and we're not going to merge a life. And that was probably the first year and a half for us too, probably first 2 years, honestly. And I'm like, this isn't going to work either, because we're still operating as like two separate people. Like, either one of us could go. Are you out or am I out? And so it still felt like we weren't on the same page.
Okay. Yeah.
And finally just having the conversations of like, we're in this together. Like, I'm not leaving. You're not leaving. There's no plans to go.
I love you, baby. This is it.
Let's just do this. And also it could fall apart and we could be wrong.
There's no guarantee.
And it could end again. But for now, like, this is the choice. And if we both choose that we want to grow together and we want to make this work, then that's how we're going to do it. And like, who knows? Anything could happen. Yeah. But I think that mindset was a big shift too, of like, I can't just keep being my independent self in a relationship, because that doesn't work.
That doesn't work. You have to go in and be with each other together. Yeah. And that's where you guys are at now.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the future for you guys? What's going on? When are we getting married?
Oh, shoot.
How? Like we getting married?
Yeah.
When is that happening?
So, that's been an interesting conversation we're still having. He, in his past life, he was a pastor.
Okay.
And so marriage really was wrapped up in the church. Yes. And he's separated himself from that institution. Okay. So we're really trying to figure out, what does that look like? Yep. And that was what was really great about this wedding in Greece, was our friends really brought a different idea to marriage, of their union and how they wanted it to be. And so I think my idea is, honestly, we're like, we don't want anything big or crazy, because we've been there, done that. Yeah. But I want something special and meaningful. Yeah. And I think he's really still untying the religious part of it. So, we're still just deciding how we want to do that. Like, I don't necessarily just want to go to the courthouse. I want something special and intimate, but it's like, but we have to pull that church out of it. So we're still kind of discussing
out how that's going to look like for you guys.
But, we're actually discussing moving. He's in the Bay Area right now. I was hoping he could come to this, but he's in the Bay Area working on a project, and we might end up moving up there. So, but we adopted a little puppy together, and she's our little baby. And so it's funny. We kind of it's our little family, and we just, we're...
You're making it work.
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Yeah, very. And it's so interesting, because I look back, and it's so crazy when you're in the moment of the betrayal, and you're in that, you cannot see a future. I know. Because I remember my future was like, we were going to have our 10-year anniversary, and we were going to do this. And so my future felt like it was gone. Right. And now I look forward, and I have just a completely different future. One I never would have imagined, because this person didn't exist. Like, this reality didn't exist. Right. But it's interesting to be here in this future and look back, and it just feels like that was a complete lifetime ago. Like, there are people who know me now who never met my ex-husband, didn't know,
completely different.
Didn't know me as that person. I'm a completely different person with him. And it's fascinating how we can change so much and evolve so much as humans. And, I know 5-10 years from now we'll be completely different people then too. Yes. But I feel like I have a lot more hope. I think that the ending of the first marriage was also the ending of a big chunk of me. Right. It was the death of my relationship, but it was also a death of part of who I was.
Because you grew, right? Yeah. You grew and you evolved, and you became, a whole new you.
And I think love is possible for anyone, but I do think that, especially coming from betrayal, but it takes a really hard look at yourself, like just deep introspection, deep introspection, and just courage. It takes courage. On our first anniversary, Jeff got me this bracelet, and it was a quote I had seen in a bathroom in Nashville. I took a picture, and it said, "Have the courage to trust love one more time."
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was, for me, it was like, it is so courageous to try to trust love again, because it's so scary to lose it, and it hurts. Yes. And so that's just been kind of the motto we've had. It was just, and for both of us, really, it was like, have the courage to trust love one more time. Right. And so, I think just if I was going to leave that to anybody, like, hope, I don't know, that's what I was going to ask you. No,
we're going to leave it like that. We're going to leave it like that. I want you to have the last word. Yep. So for women that are feeling that, how do you want to leave it for them when they're hearing this right now? They're like, okay, so there is hope for me. Yeah. So, there is possibility for me. Yeah. What would you want to say to them?
There's stories we tell ourselves about why things ended, why things aren't working out, whether it's how we look, our age, where we live. All of those are stories. There's men out there for literally everyone. Absolutely. Every shape and size. Yep. And, like, I remember seeing TLC. I'm like, somebody loves Honey Boo Boos, mom. So there's somebody for everyone. So it's just work on yourself, work on loving yourself the most. Yes. And then just have the courage to go out there again. Oh, that's fantastic. And just know you may not get it right the first time. Right. But it's just so beautiful to try again. Yes. And I really believe we are rewarded for courage.
Oh, I love that. Okay, how do they get a hold of you? Because you're amazing. So, so people are listening. They can follow you, love on you. How do they get a hold of you?
I am on Instagram at DannyJ.com. It's DANNY like a boy, and then just the letter J, and then DOTCOM, like spellout.com.
Okay.
So I'm there on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, all the things. It's DannyJ.com.
Follow her. She's amazing, you guys. No, seriously, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Such a great energy, great human being.
And then the Best Life podcast. It's such a great place. And actually, if you know, if you're interested in Betrayal, if you go to thebestlifepodcast.com, our episodes are separated out by topics.
Oh, fantastic.
And you can even type in a topic. And we do a ton on betrayal and relationships and communication.
Oh, fantastic.
And a lot of like personal development kind of topics.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
You guys, ladies, listen to that. Go follow the Best Life podcast. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And before we leave, listen, I just want to say something. I want to cheers.
Yay!
So I brought some champagne or Prosecco. I'm going to try to do this. Okay, here we go, guys. Here we go.
Always the scary
This is
part.
all about love.
Woo! There we go.
So give me yours. I'm going to do a nice, first of all, again, thank you for being on today. Hold on. Do a little cheers. Because love is amazing. Love is the most special gift ever. So I just want to say cheers.
Cheers.
To great love.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
That's a wrap. What a great interview that was with Danny J. And how she was able to find love again and continue success after she was blindsided by her ex-husband. What a great story. If you're loving this podcast, please hit subscribe button and leave a 5-star review, because each week I'll bring on guests that share everything when it comes to love, dating, and relationships so you can apply it into your own life. I'll see you next week. Until then, cheers to great love.